the worst car that we have ever had. Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new video here on BLURBOSH. I hope you are having a wonderful day and thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. As I've just said, the worst car that we've ever bought. It's a story that I haven't told you guys ever before and I think it deserves an explanation. So you guys may have seen a video on me rating the cars that we have owned from worst to best, and the worst car we had was a French DS3. This particular DS3 was a DS3 Racing Edition in yellow and black as well as white. Why I said black was because when we got the car and we were looking at the listings, it did advertise it with the black livery that the DS Racings had, and when we picked it up it didn't have any of those stickers on there, understandably, because by the time we got it, it had already been 12 years old or something like that. I can imagine the decals are completely dried out and were cracking to hell, and they were eventually taken off. Now the DS3 Racing Edition was a 1.6 THP engine, which whenever you look at any of the forums for any French car, the 1.6 THP is an engine to avoid. Now we didn't actually look at any reviews on the car or what people have experienced with a 1.6 THP, so we stupidly bought the car. We bought the car for 1900 quid from a guy who owns a garage. I won't mention his name for his own privacy and because, you know, I think he was upset about it too. But he was a nice guy and, you know, he was really helpful in dealing with the situation that we were in with the car. So we had the DS3 for a month before we eventually sent it back because we had just completely given up on it, fallen out of love with it, and wanted our money back, understandably, which fortunately he was very kind in doing so. We were very lucky in having bought that car off him because we had to borrow a car of his until it was fixed numerous amounts of times, and he was very kind enough to give us our money back after a month, which, you know, if you look at many other places or people, I mean, he never sold it under his garage name because it was his partner's car that they used very briefly, and you know, whether he knew that the issues that were with that car or not, I'm not sure. I still won't know to this day. He dealt with it quite professionally and very obviously willingly to help us out because we were nice people and we gave the car a chance to work. So when we picked it up, it never had any of the stickers on it. It was in a lovely condition, yellow and white, with a little bit of black still attached to it, and it was only a low miler from what I remember. It was like something 70 odd thousand miles, something or other. We were given a story that the car was bought when they bought it with a snapped chain. The chain was replaced and the engine seemed to run fine, and we never actually had any problems with the engine itself in relation to cylinders and, well, chain issues, apart from one thing. When we first got it, we noticed from time to time there was a misfire of some description. The car wouldn't run right, and sometimes it wouldn't even start properly. So we took it back and we found out it was the high pressure fuel pump that was attached to the engine. There were two on the DS3, one on the engine and one obviously in the tank, and there was one on the engine that went, and that was a 450 quid fix. Anyways, got that fixed, arranged to pay him back on that point, and we drove the car and it drove really well. We had it running perfectly fine for a good week and a half. We did a trip where we went to a car meet in it, and then we went with the Corsa as well, at the time, and it was a great little trip. The car was actually very good on fuel considering it was a 1.6 turbo. We were quite impressed with it. It drove nicely. It had a knock in the steering somewhere, which we thought it must be some sort of either drop link or track rod end, but it turned out to be a lot worse than that. In fact, we didn't actually figure what it was in the end because we had other issues that we had to sort. There was a fog light that wasn't working, and we noticed quite quickly after then that there was some sort of coolant issue. When the car was stationary, it would show signs of trying to overheat. You could see the temperature gauge going into the red. But when you drove it, it cooled down perfectly fine. It never used to overheat when you took it on long journeys. It was only when the car was stationary. So we thought, well, it must be a thermostat issue for sure. But when we checked it out in closer inspection, we found out it was something to do with the water pump. Well, that's what we suspected anyways. So we ended up taking the water pump off and noticed that these engines are very cleverly designed, and you can easily release this rubber shoe pulley, I'd like to call it. And it's basically a pulley with a big rubber ring around it, in essence, that drives the water pump. Now, when the car didn't have enough revs to spin it up, the water pump wouldn't turn because it just kept slipping because there was no traction, should we say, off the rubber pulley. So the rubber pulley had to get replaced, but by then we'd already taken off the water pump, and this is where things started to go very, very wrong with it. So we got a new water pump, which I still have to this day. It's somewhere in the unit. I've never returned it. I've kept it just in case we ever needed it for something else, I suppose. Now I can't return it. And we went to go and fit the water pump. When we tried to fit the water pump, however, we buttoned everything up, put fresh coolant in it, and it dumped it all straight back out from the thermostat housing. Oh dear. We then quickly realised that it was to do with this plastic connector tube thing that connected from the water pump on one side of the engine straight past the inlet manifold to the thermostat on the other side. Unfortunately, this pipe was under the inlet manifold, so we had to take that off. We took the pipe off, and then after a bit of digging around and a bit of research, we found out it was a common problem because they were made out of plastic. Oh dear. And replaced the pipe, which we did. Trying to get the bugger back on was quite difficult, and then putting everything else back on, especially whilst the engine is lifted up, it wasn't great. Anyways, we got all that connected up and it worked briefly. However, it then dumped it back out again. So what we did from then on was phone the garage and say, look, this is what's happened, this is what we've tried to do, the car's not running, it won't go anywhere, it's been sat here for a while, can you pick it up and have a look at it? And I must admit, to the guy who we bought it from, he was a diamond, and he picked it up for us, took it back to his unit, had a little look at it, and managed to get it all fixed. We then took it from him, and the turbo wasn't working. Now, he couldn't look at it for a couple of days, so we ended up leaving it at the side of the road outside mine, where I was living at the time, and we got someone else to come out and have a look at it as a second resort, basically, as a second opinion. And he looked at the car, he drove it, and he took it up on a ramp and found out that it needed 3 new wheel bearings, the turbo connecting to the car, the actual vacuum lines had actually broken off. There was a lot of engine plastics that were melted and broken off or poorly mistreated. The brakes needed replacing, which at the time we didn't notice anything, and it was something to do with the steering rack that was making the knocking noise that I mentioned earlier. So he said to us this car is a death trap, which broke our hearts a little bit because the colour wasn't what we wanted. We just wanted, well, also Sarah wanted a DS3 for her second car, and that's what she wanted. So we got one for her. We got it pretty cheap, and we knew it was cheap, and we didn't expect it to be perfect. And we expected it to run as it was described, and it didn't. So we mentioned all this back to the guy we bought it from and said, look, turbo's not working, this is what else is wrong with it, this is a list that an independent mechanic has gone around and checked the car with, can you have a look at it? It was picked up again, and eventually we both came to the decision, after 3 attempts of trying to get this car to work, and for borrowing the same car twice, which was a lovely 1.7 Isuzu Corsa D, 3-door with heated seats. It was brilliant, loved that car, it was fantastic as a courtesy car goes anyways, to the point where I would actually love to own one. I don't think Sarah would be too happy in me getting one, but otherwise it was a fantastic car, rough around the edges, but it was great. Anyway, back to the DS3. We decided mutually that this deal was not going to work, and he suggested we have our money back. We were quite willing into accepting the fact that the car is broken, yes, and we would like it fixed, because we loved the car. We did love the car, and for what it was, the colour grew on us, how it drove, it was a fabulous thing, but mechanically flawed, unfortunately. So we both had a talk and decided it is for the best that we get a reliable car for the time being, and maybe we might get another DS3 in future, but this one isn't for us, sadly. So we agreed to have our money back, and that was that. The car was brought back to the garage once again, and we drove away. Bittersweet, should we say, because we actually liked that car, and we had a massive row over it, because we were both deeply upset, because we really wanted this car. We found it quite cheap, and it was something that, had it had broken in future, like in 3 months down the line, we would have had a couple of paychecks by then, that we would have been able to sort something with it. But unfortunately, as circumstantial goes, the Corsa ended up blowing its engine not so long afterwards, so that had to get parked up, so I didn't have a spare car anymore. It become a blessing in some cases, really. And then further on down the line, we're expecting our little boy, and that DS3 wouldn't have coped with our little family upcoming. And I think it was more so a sign that it just was not meant to be at that point. We had bought new spark plugs for it. We even swapped some of the coil packs to see if that earlier misfire would go away, which it didn't. We then found out it was the fuel pump, which was 450 quid. We at the time agreed that we would pay monthly for it, because we just got the car. It was not something we were expecting. The guy agreed with it, and we eventually had our money back for that as well, because it just fell apart, sadly. And you know, I have all the faith with the guy. I still talk to him now from time to time whenever I see him passing by, see how business is and what have you. Lovely guy, and I have nothing against him. I do believe that car was his partner's, and she used it, and obviously it just fell apart, unfortunately. And that's how things go, you know. Sometimes you buy lemons. This car was in the colour of a lemon, I suppose, which, upon my better judgment, being that every yellow car has some sort of possession of some sort, we went with that car. So where is the DS3 now is the question. Well, unfortunately, we found out that the guy who we bought the car from eventually sold it to an auction, and we had an interest to find out where that car went, and we found out not long after it was bought from auction, the car was unfortunately scrapped. The car obviously needed a lot more money than what the car was actually worth, wasn't running correctly, and somebody obviously bought it for parts, or they bought it, realised they couldn't fix it, and stripped it and sold it for bits. And that was a shame, really, because we still, even though we only had it for a month, we still look back and think, if only we had a couple more pays out of that car, and we could have done something with it. But we both agree, even now, and this is what, nearly 2 years, 2.5 years later, that it was probably the most adult decision that we made, because the car wouldn't have suited us later down the line anyways. It would have probably been a project car, but at the time we needed something that would be running as a daily, and that car just didn't unfortunately work out for us. So that was the story on the very dreaded and very possessed, should we say, mechanically possessed DS3. It was a very short ownership for a month, and it was quite the experience, unfortunately. And it just didn't work out. That car, I didn't even get a chance on making a video on that car to welcome it to the channel. So this is not only a description of what the car is, but you may have even seen a few photos of what the car looked like. And Christ, if we had had that car still now, what would it be like now? It probably would still be at its same fate as it is now, to be honest, just because of life circumstances that have happened since then, and since the demise of the other cars that we've had during the time of that car, i.e. the Insignia breaking down, and then eventually the clutch had to get done on it, and then 2 years later the clutch went on it again, and I've had to get the Grandland. So the DS3 would have been quite a money grabbing scheme in the long run, unfortunately. And again, French quality, you may say. Well, it's a French car, what do you expect? We've had a few friends that have had DS3s, usually diesels or 1.2s, and they've not really had that many issues with them. This was our first chance at getting the 1.6 THP, which both of us actually wished we had one at one point, because we used to watch Top Gear when they had the DS3 racing round Monaco, and that's where our drive for getting one was from, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Anyways guys, that's the end of this video today on the DS3. Unfortunately it didn't work out. I'm so sorry that you guys never saw any videos on that car, but this is an explanation into what actually happened with that car. Hope you guys enjoyed anyways, and I hope you guys have a good one. Take care and stay safe. Leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.